Many years ago, there was a successful village sitting proudly beside a wide brown river called Anamiri, which existed like a rich old man who does not shout about his money. In those days, people said Anamiri was an ordinary village until something happened. There was a season of shame there. A young man from the village began stealing from his own people. At first, it was small things. A goat here, a bracelet there, or a small pouch of cowries. He thought he was smart and that nobody would notice until one night when he entered a widow's house and carried her late husband's golden staff. Unfortunately, as he stepped outside, the ground beneath him cracked like dry bread. It did not shake the whole village. It only opened under him. The elders said the sound was not loud. It was just a soft swallow. By morning, there was no sign of the young man. Only a narrow line in the sand remained. After the incident, the village gathered to deliberate, and the oldest elder at the time, Papa Nwore, declared, "We will not build walls to ward off evil. We will build fear in the hearts." That day, a covenant was made. They did a binding agreement between the people and the gods of the land. If anyone steals in Anamiri, the land will expose that person. And if you refuse to return what is not yours, the ground will remember how to open. From that day, doors disappeared. People no longer saw the need to use doors for safety since they had a greater shield. At first, visitors laughed at the possibility. No doors? How is that even possible? But the villagers took this to heart, and as years passed, their wealth grew because there was no evil. The village became known for trade, palm oil business, real estate. They had sons and daughters abroad, mansions without gates and sitting rooms open to the breeze. Their jewelries were always resting on the tables like fruits on display. Nobody locked anything, and children grew up without learning how to hide their toys. If somebody dropped money on the road, the money would wait patiently for that person like a dog trained to stay. As usual, visitors who heard of the culture added pepper to it. They say if you steal, your tongue will twist. They say your body will start to swell. They say sometimes the ground will open to swallow you. Nobody could confirm which one was true, and that was the beauty of it, because fear did the work that security cameras could not. Fast forward to many years later in Lagos, Chilaka was in the office kitchen when she stood up smiling like a girl who had swallowed sunlight to announce, "My traditional wedding is next month." The office erupted. "Is it a village wedding?" Amaka shouted. "Yes, it's in Anamiri." Three heads turned immediately. "Wait, that's Anamiri, that village?" "Yes," Chilaka replied proudly, "the one with no doors." Everybody began talking at once. "I have seen it on Instagram. My cousin went there once. They say they leave their cars unlocked. They say if you steal, the ground..." Chilaka laughed and cut them off. "Nobody is swallowing anybody, please. Just behave yourself." Belusomma, who had been stirring her tea quietly, snorted. "Abeg, in this Nigeria, no doors. They are just doing content, jare." Belusomma was a beautiful, sharp girl who believed in efforts. She believed in hustle and in backup plans. She did not believe in any fairy tale. Amaka leaned closer to her and asked, "So you think it is fake?" Belusomma shrugged. "Rich people like drama. Maybe they hide their valuables in secret rooms. This one is branding, abeg." Chilaka shook her head gently. "You'll see with your own eyes now." That same day, the Ashebi group chat was created. Colors were chosen, lace was measured, and contributions were made. The excitement for Chilaka's wedding grew like yeast in dough. And then 4 weeks later, they were on the road. However, the closer they got to Anamiri, the quieter Belusoma became. Not because she was afraid though, but because she was observing. When they entered the village, something felt different instantly. Actually, it was not spooky. It just felt strange. There were houses without doors. These were beautiful houses. The marble floors were visible from the road, and you could see the expensive sofas from inside. Chandeliers were hanging boldly. There was no burglary proof, no heavy padlock or iron gates. One elderly woman walked past them, removed her gold bangles, placed them on a wooden stool outside her house, and then went inside to fetch water. Belusoma blinked. Is she coming back for that? She whispered. Chilaka smiled. She does not need to rush. They walked further and saw a young boy who parked a shiny SUV, left the key in the ignition, and ran off to greet his friends. Belusoma laughed nervously. This is temptation management. Nobody responded. At the village square, people dropped their handbags carelessly. Phones lay on tables, and yet nobody watched anybody suspiciously. No one gripped their purse tighter when strangers passed. Belusoma folded her arms and said, "This is arranged. They knew we were coming." Chilaka's aunt overheard her and laughed. "My daughter, Anamiri does not rearrange itself for visitors. It is always like this." That night, inside the room, Amaka flopped onto the bed. Imagine living like this. No stress, no fear. Belusoma sat down and removed her earrings. Fear is there. It is just packaged differently. Chilaka looked at her through the mirror. "Belu, please, don't test anything here." Belusoma raised her hands dramatically. "Test what? I'm a corporate woman, oh." Everybody laughed. The next morning, Anamiri woke up dressed in glory. The sun rose slowly as if it too wanted to attend the wedding. Drums began before breakfast and women's voices floated through the air. To balance the equation, the smell of roasted goat meat traveled confidently from compound to compound. Belusoma stepped outside and paused at how the village had transformed overnight. Men stood in groups wearing spotless white wrappers with thick coral beads resting heavily on their chests. Their walking sticks were not ordinary sticks. They were carved, polished, and decorated with gold tips. Even the old men looked expensive. Women glided past like queens dressed in George wrappers and gold necklaces. Bangles filled their wrists from their palms to elbows. Nobody hid their wealth. Belusoma adjusted her gele slowly as her eyes moved from neck to wrist to ankle. This is money, old money, ego siri, the type of money that does not rush. Amaka whispered, I feel underdressed." "You are underdressed," Belusoma replied dryly. At the Bright family compound, cars lined up neatly outside. They were not rented or borrowed cars. These were big machines that looked like they drank premium fuel only. One little boy used a remote to open a car trunk. Inside were neatly packed gift boxes wrapped in gold paper. He shut it and ran off to chase his friends. Belusoma frowned. He did not lock it. Chilaka's cousin overheard and smiled. "Why should he?" Belusoma laughed small. "I'm just saying." As the traditional rites began, kola nuts were presented, palm wine was poured, and the groom's family presented their gifts. Envelopes filled with cash were displayed openly. Thick bundles. Belusoma swallowed hard. She leaned towards Amaka and whispered, "Are they not afraid of outsiders?" Amaka shrugged. "Or maybe outsiders are afraid of them." After the ceremony, the celebration expanded like fire meeting dry grass. Music rose and plates of food moved around. One elderly woman removed her heavy gold necklace and placed it on a plastic chair beside her while she adjusted her wrapper. Belusoma stared. That necklace alone could pay someone's rent in Lekki for 2 years. But nobody looked at it or guarded it. The woman returned, wore it again, and continued dancing. Belusoma felt something shift inside her. Not hunger or greed, though. She felt challenged. These people need to be taught a lesson. Later in the afternoon, Chilaka's aunt stood beside her proudly. You see why we do not build doors? Belusoma tilted her head. You trust people that much? The aunt shook her head gently. We do not trust people. We trust consequences. The word sat down in Belusoma's chest. We trust consequences. But she laughed to herself. Superstition. As evening approached, the wealth display became even more open. Guests who had traveled from abroad changed into second outfits. In a matter of minutes, diamonds appeared. Gold wristwatches flashed. One woman casually sprayed dollar in the air as if they were tissue paper. The girls screamed in excitement as they recorded videos. Belusoma stood still. Her eyes followed a small group of wealthy women walking towards a nearby house. They were laughing loudly. One of them said, "Let us drop this before we change." Belusoma watched them enter the house with no door. The entrance was wide open. From where she stood, she could see inside. There was a large wooden table with velvet boxes of jewelry. Nobody stood guarding it. The women came out minutes later in lighter outfits. Their wrists were empty. They returned to the party without looking back. Belusoma's heartbeat shifted, but she told herself she was only observing. That was all. Chilaka appeared beside her suddenly. Belu, you look serious. I am fine, Belusoma said. You are not enjoying the party? Chilaka asked. I am enjoying, oh, I am just studying. Studying what? Belusoma smiled faintly. Human behavior. Chilaka looked at her for a moment longer than usual and added. Belusoma waved her hand dismissively. Please, nothing will happen. If something happens, it is a coincidence. Her eyes landed on the house where the jewelry had been left, and somewhere deep inside her, she decided to test whether Anamiri was mere folk tales or truth. The celebration continued and men argued cheerfully over who would carry the biggest goat's head home. The air was thick with food, money and pride. Belusoma stood still in the middle of it all, but her mind had left the party. She convinced herself that she was not a thief. She told herself she only wanted to confirm something. She told herself that intelligent people verify myth. Belu! Amaka shouted from the dance floor. Come and dance! In a minute, Belusoma replied. Her voice sounded normal, but her heart did not. She began to move casually away from the noise. Nobody noticed her. Why would they? In Anamiri, people did not scan strangers with suspicion. That was the whole point. She got to the house, which stood at a distance with no gate. The entrance was still wide open, like a mouth that did not believe it could be harmed. Belusoma paused outside and listened for any sound. Inside the house, the wooden table was still there, and on it were velvet boxes, gold bangles, thick coral beads, and a small leather pouch, exactly as she had seen it earlier from afar. She stepped in. Her heels made a small sound against the marble floor. She froze, but nothing happened. No thunder rolled, and no old man appeared from nowhere with a stick. There was no voice from the ceiling doing ho 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 ho. She exhaled slowly. See? She whispered to herself. It is just drama. She moved closer to the table. Up close, the jewelry looked heavier, richer and real. She picked up one gold bangle. It was solid, not hollow. Her throat tightened slightly. She put it down. Then she laughed and muttered, "What am I afraid of? If I take it now, I can drop it back tomorrow morning before anyone notices." That was how she convinced herself. It was a temporary social experiment. She opened the small velvet box. Inside lay a diamond ring. Clean, sharp, expensive ring. She swallowed her saliva and her hand moved before her mind caught up. She slipped the ring into her clutch bag. She waited for 5 seconds and nothing happened, so her confidence grew. She took two heavy gold bangles, added them to the bag. Then she took the coral bead necklace, then the leather pouch. The pouch felt thick. She opened it slightly and froze when she saw foreign currency. Dollars were inside. Her breath quickened. Outside, the wind suddenly rose. The curtain near the window shifted, even though there was no strong breeze inside. Belusoma turned sharply. There was nobody there. She forced herself to calm down. Relax. It is village wind. Her hands trembled slightly as she closed her bag. That was when she felt it more. She felt a brief cold sensation across her wrist, as if someone had tapped her. She jerked her hand back. Her pulse began to race. She looked towards the entrance again, but it was still empty. Stop being dramatic, she scolded herself and then turned to leave. As she stepped out of the house, a dry leaf scraped across the floor behind her. She spun around quickly and frowned when she saw that the table looked untouched. The jewelry was still on display, except that the velvet box she had opened was now closed. She was very sure she had left it open. Her chest tightened, but she told herself maybe she was imagining things. Outside, the sky had become slightly darker, even though it was not yet evening. And then, as she walked back towards the celebration, she noticed something else. A little boy stood near the path, watching her. He did not smile or blink. He just watched. Belusoma forced a cheerful tone. Why are you staring at me? The boy tilted his head slowly. You entered Auntie Ifunaya's house. Her stomach dropped, but she quickly replied, Yes, I was looking for the bathroom. The boy shook his head. There is no bathroom there. Then he turned and ran off before she could respond. She adjusted her clutch bag tightly under her arm. When she rejoined the party, Amaka grabbed her. Where did you go? I had a phone call, Belusoma replied. Chilaka looked at her carefully and said, You look pale. It is the sun, Belusoma quickly said. But it was not the sun. Inside her bag, something felt heavier than before, as if stones were in it. She shifted the bag to her other side, but the weight followed her like a stubborn child. The drums grew louder now. Women screamed in excitement as another bundle of cash was sprayed. Amaka pulled Belusoma into the dance circle. She smiled awkwardly. You're not moving your waist now, Amaka laughed. Belusoma attempted to sway, but the moment she lifted her right arm, pain shot through her wrist. She gasped. What is it? Chilaka asked immediately. It's nothing. Maybe it's cramp. She lowered her hand quickly. Just then, the gold bangles inside her bag seemed to press against each other and made a faint metallic sound. Clink! She froze, but nobody else reacted. She maintained her steeze. Maybe it was the zipper. She stepped out of the dance circle, opened her clutch slightly and peeped inside. But her heart stopped instantly. The gold did not look the same again. It looked darker, not rusted or broken, no, just dull, as if it had lost its shine in just a few minutes. Her throat dried instantly. She snapped the bag shut. Belu, Chilaka said again. Talk to me. Are you okay? I am fine, Belusoma snapped so quickly. But the word fine did not sit well in her mouth. She tried to walk towards the refreshment table. Strangely, her right hand began to tingle, then burn. She clenched her fist, but the burning intensified. She hurried towards the guest house they were lodged in. Where are you going? Amaka shouted. To use the restroom, Belusoma replied. Unfortunately, the walk to the lodge felt longer than before and the path looked narrower. The sky had also darkened slightly in her eyes, even though the sun was still visible. Halfway there, she felt something. Her skin tightened painfully. She looked down and saw that her right hand was swelling. Not small swelling or allergic swelling, it was growing. Her knuckles were puffed, her fingers were thick, the skin stretched tightly. Jesus, she whispered. She shook her hand, but it continued to expand. Within seconds, her hand looked twice its normal size. Her breathing became erratic. This is not real. This is not real. Who is messing with my mind? She reached the lodge, rushed inside, and dropped the clutch bag onto the bed. The bag fell with a heavy thud. Her right hand throbbed violently. She tried to unzip the bag to remove the jewelry, but her swollen fingers could barely move. She forced it open and the contents spilled onto the bed. Gold bangles, coral beads, the diamond ring, as well as the leather pouch. However, the moment they touched the bedspread, her left hand began to swell too, faster than the first. Within seconds, both hands had expanded to 3 times their size. She screamed. Not a small scream, oh, a full animal sound. Amaka burst into the room first. What happened? Chilaka followed behind. They both froze at the sight. Belusomma's hands were grotesque, bloated, puffy and shiny. The skin looked stretched and painful. Belu! Chilaka shouted. What is this? Belusomma tried to speak. My hands! I don't know. Amaka's eyes dropped to the bed. She saw the jewelry. Chilaka saw it and her face drained of color. Belusomma, her voice was no longer playful. Where did this come from? Belusomma's lips trembled. Her tongue suddenly felt thick. Her mouth would not form the next word. She tried again. But her speech was twisted. Her hand swelled further, 4 times bigger now. The skin began to look dangerously tight. She screamed again. Outside, footsteps gathered because word spread fast in a village that does not shout. Within minutes, the compound was full. Women and men arrived. Nobody ran or panicked. They just stood and watched. One elderly woman stepped forward and said, "That is Ifunaya's jewelry." Chilaka's legs felt weak. Belu, please tell me you did not. Belusomma's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Instead, her body jerked. The leather pouch on the bed shifted. It fell open and dollar notes spilled out. A collective gasp rose from the doorway. One old man walked in slowly. "Child, why take what is not yours?" Belusomma shook her head violently. "I was going to bring it back," she managed to force out. Her voice sounded distorted. The old man nodded once. "The land heard what your mouth did not say." By now, her hands had expanded again. They were now 5 times their normal size. Her fingers looked like inflated gloves. She cried loudly now. "It hurts! Please, make it stop!" Chilaka's eyes were filled with tears. "Why would you do this in my village? Why, Belu?" Belusomma fell to her knees. "I just wanted to test it." The room went quiet. Test it? Outside, a low rumble passed beneath the ground like a gentle vibration. The elders exchanged glances. One of them whispered, "She's lucky." Amaka heard it and repeated, "Lucky?" The elderly woman nodded slowly. "Yes, for some, the ground does not wait this long." A young boy at the doorway whispered loudly, "My uncle said one man disappeared instantly years ago." His mother pulled him back sharply. Belusomma's breathing became ragged at this point. Her swollen hands trembled violently. The diamond ring rolled slowly off the bed and onto the floor, but nobody touched it. The old man spoke again. "Confess fully." Belusomma cried. "I took it. The bangles, the necklace, the ring, the money. I took everything. I wanted to see if it was true. I did not think." "That is the problem," the old man interrupted. "You did not think." The moment the final word of confession left her mouth, Belusomma's hands stopped expanding, but they did not reduce. They remained enormous, painful, and ugly. If you do not return everything properly, it will continue to expand, the woman said. Belusoma tried to gather the jewelry with her swollen hands, but she could barely grip them. Chilaka stepped forward with tears streaming down her face. I will return it for her, she said. No, the elder replied. She must do it herself. As such, Belusoma crawled forward and placed the bangles slowly back into the velvet box. The coral beads followed. The dollars were gathered and placed back inside the pouch. Each item she returned seemed to ease the tension in the room slightly. When the last piece was returned, the old man lifted his walking stick and tapped the floor once. Immediately, the rumbling stopped and slowly, very slowly, Belusoma's hands began to reduce, not instantly but gradually, from 5 times bigger to 4 times to 3 times, until they were still swollen but no longer monstrous. She collapsed fully onto the floor, crying uncontrollably. I am sorry, I am sorry. Chilaka could not look at her. The elderly woman shook her head and said, in Anamiri, we do not build doors because we build consequences. Belusoma looked up through her tears. I did not know. You knew, the woman replied. You just believed you were smarter. The old man sighed. She is fortunate. The land chose correction. Amaka whispered to Chilaka. What does that mean? Chilaka answered. It means she will live here alive. Belusoma remained on the floor long after most people left. Her pride lay shattered beside her. Chilaka finally spoke. You embarrassed me. Belusoma could not even defend herself. There was nothing left to say. That night, she could not sleep. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw the table and the velvet box. The moment her hand crossed the line from curiosity into theft, then she would hear that low rumble again, not loud enough to shake walls, but just strong enough to remind her that the ground beneath her was not ordinary soil. She turned on the mattress in the guest room. Her hands still ached. They were no longer 5 times bigger, but they were swollen enough to remind her that the swelling had been real. It was not her imagination or panic attack. This was not village drama. It was real. Amaka lay on the other bed, quiet for once. Chilaka sat upright by the window, staring into the dark. Nobody confronted her. Around midnight, Belusoma sat up slowly. Sweat covered her neck. Her heart was beating fast as if she had been running. In her dream, she had been walking across the village square. The ground beneath her feet had cracked into thin lines like broken glass. She had tried to run, but her swollen hands had dragged her down. And then, just before the earth opened fully, she woke up. She pressed her palms together and whispered into the darkness, I am sorry. By morning, Anamiri looked normal again. Women swept their compounds, children chased each other, and men discussed business. Houses stood open as usual, and gold rested openly on window ledges as if nothing had happened. But something had changed. Belusoma could feel it. She stepped outside slowly and people greeted her politely. Good morning, she responded, but could not meet their eyes. The elderly man from the previous evening approached her with his walking stick. You will not leave today, he said. Her stomach tightened. I understand, she replied. You will remain for 3 days. Belusoma froze. Why? For restitution, the man replied. He did not raise his voice or threaten. He simply stated it as a fact. Chilaka's aunt joined them. You will sponsor the roofing of the community primary school, she said. It needs repair. Belusoma blinked and asked, how much? The amount mentioned was not small. It was not impossible for her, but it hurt to bring it out. Still, she nodded. I will pay. The old man studied her face for a moment and then said, money is not the only restitution. You will apologize publicly this afternoon. Her throat tightened again. Publicly? In Lagos, mistakes were hidden, covered with excuses and blamed on stress, traffic or misunderstanding. But here, exposure was the cure. That afternoon, the village square was filled with witnesses. Belusoma stood in front of them and spoke clearly. I stole from this village. I thought I was testing a story, but I discovered I was testing my own character. I am sorry. The woman who owned the jewelry stepped forward and said, "You are forgiven, but forgiveness does not erase consequence. Let this be your door." Belusoma nodded slowly. "My door," she repeated. That evening, as she walked alone through the village, a small boy approached her, the same one who had watched her the day before. "You were lucky," he said bluntly. Belusoma smiled small. "I heard. My uncle said the ground only opens when someone refuses to return what is not theirs," the little boy said. She swallowed hard and asked, "What happens then?" The boy shrugged. "Nobody sees them again," he said, and ran off casually. Belusoma stood there for a long time. Then she understood something clearly. Fear of being caught is different from fear of consequence. That was the magic. In Lagos, she had cut corners before. She had done small office manipulations. She once even claimed travel reimbursement for a trip she did not make. She once kept extra change from a vendor who miscalculated. But nothing dramatic happened. Nothing that shook the earth. Unfortunately, even intention had weight. On the third day, she transferred the money for the school roof repair. She showed the receipts to the elders. They nodded once and the old man said, "You may leave tomorrow." That night, Chilaka finally spoke to her privately. "You disappointed me," she said. Belusoma nodded. "I know. I defended this village in Lagos. I told them we were different." Belusoma nodded. "I know." Chilaka looked at her carefully and asked, "Why did you really do it?" Belusoma hesitated. Then she answered honestly, "I thought nobody should be that comfortable. I believed there had to be a catch. I just wanted to prove it." "And what did you prove?" Chilaka asked. "I proved that I was the problem," Belusoma replied. Chilaka exhaled slowly. "You are lucky you learned it here." The next morning, the Ashebi girls packed their bags, but this time, the journey back to Lagos felt longer. Belusoma kept her hands resting on her lap the entire ride. She did not touch her phone or speak much. When they entered the city, the noise returned. Honking, shouting, gates banging, padlocks, security guards. Everything felt loud. She reached her apartment building and stood in front of her door. The iron gate with two locks felt different now. She unlocked it slowly. Inside, she looked around differently too, and she noticed how much she depended on metal for security. She placed her bag on the table and then sat down quietly. Her hands were back to normal size now, but every time she stretched her fingers, she remembered how they had grown 5 times larger. Weeks later, pictures of the repaired community school roof were sent to her phone. Children stood beneath it, smiling with no doors in sight. She stared at the picture for a long time and kept it to herself. She did not tell anyone in Lagos the full story, not because she was ashamed, but because some lessons are not for entertainment. Thank you for watching the story. Kindly share your thoughts about the story with me in the comment section. What lesson did you learn from this story? Kindly share the story out with your loved ones and give the story a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye.